Hi everyone, my name is Emily Clark and I am presenting the Portfolio Part 2 Infancy and Toddlerhood assignment. So, my overall topic of this PowerPoint is the physical development of infants and toddlers, and my subcategories are what is physical development, gross and fine motor skills, and cultural variances and similarities on physical development. So, we're going to start off by asking the simple question of what is physical development? So, physical development is a combination of varying factors that play a part in a child's growth, motor skills, and bodily control. So, we're going to begin by examining the normal body growth. So, in year 1, the child is typically about 32 inches tall, and that is 50% bigger than the actual size at birth. Which is very interesting because if you look down at year 2, it says that the child is about 36 inches tall. So the child has grown quite a bit. So from year 1 to year 2, it's only about a 4-inch difference, and which is actually really interesting because from birth to year 1, it's a huge difference. Okay, so we're going to go back to year 1. At year 1, the child typically weighs about 22 pounds, while the child at year 2 weighs about 30 pounds, and at year 2, the child is 75% bigger than its size at birth. We're now going to look at body growth trends. So here are 2 types of body growth trends, the cephalocaudal trend and the proximodistal trend. The cephalocaudal trend is when the infant grows from head to tail, which means the head grows first and then the legs grow later. So we can look over at the picture and at the baby that's labeled A, you can see the arrows pointing from his head down to his legs, which shows it's from the head to the tail, to the feet. And also, a fun fact about the cephalocaudal trend is that a lot of the times the head takes up for a much larger percent of the body than the rest of the body. So now we're going to look at the proximodistal trend. And this is when the infant grows from near to far, which means the growth begins at the center of the body and then moves outward. So as you can see, there's arrows that kind of cross and they go to the legs and to the arms. And so this just means the growth starts at the torso and then goes outward. Now we're going to look at the gross and fine motor skills. So in gross motor skills, there are larger movements, which means pretty much just the walking, crawling, sitting upright, pulling up on a chair, and everything like that. And these movements help the child get around in its environment. And then you have fine motor skills, which are much smaller movements than the gross motor skills, which they're still equally as important, but they're just simply smaller. And they include eye movement, grasping and reaching, and as the child ages, learning to tie their shoes and stuff like that. And they also have some similarities, and both fine and gross motor skills have internal and external influences that affect a child's physical development. So what that means is there will be an example on the next slide when talking about the cultural differences, but for an example of an external influence is, if parents push their children to walk and crawl sooner, then sometimes they will. That's not always a definite guaranteed, but they sometimes will. And then there's also no right or wrong timeline for when children develop these skills. And again, what's meant by that is that some children skip the crawling stage and they go straight to walking, or some kids will crawl and then walk, as the quote-unquote normal. And so, there's absolutely no right or wrong. As long as it's within a certain amount of time, you don't want your child to only start walking at 5 years old. But, the order of these things and stuff like that, there's no right or wrong. Lastly, we're going to discuss a cultural difference on physical development. So in Western countries, the crawling stage is almost a necessity, a quote-unquote necessity. But in countries like Kenya and Jamaica, it's rarely practiced. This is because parents highly value strength in their children and their families, and so they practice this exercise where they bounce their children on their legs while the child is standing, which builds muscles in their legs, and they begin to typically walk a lot faster than in Western countries. And like I said earlier, they a lot of the time skip the crawling stage, which again, like I said earlier, refers to those external influences on the child's timeline as they do their gross motor skills. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching and learning about physical development with me. I really enjoyed this assignment. It was very interesting learning about, all of the different types of development in infancy and toddlerhood. And here's my